I've been interviewed about 10 times in the last 12 months. On the other hand, as somebody in a managerial role, I have conducted about 6 interviews for someone who I would work with directly on a daily basis. In doing these interviews, there's one question that I have come to dislike above all others, and that is, how would your coworkers describe you? Or what would your boss/coworkers say about working with you? At its core, this question is inviting the candidate to self-evaluate what they are like to work with and the efficacy and accuracy of their own performance at work. Here are 3 reasons why I really don't like this question. The first reason is practical. Even if I'm very interested in a candidate, I'm still going to check their references. Checking references is oftentimes a security requirement, at least in animation or work from home environments. Asking a candidate, how would your coworkers describe you, therefore seems especially redundant in scenarios like interviews, which already usually have time restrictions. The second reason is that people tend to only focus on the positives. We all, myself included, tend to take this question as an opportunity to sing around praises and humble brag. The third and biggest reason is that I just do not think it is a helpful question to ask when trying to determine what someone's performance might be like. I became convinced of this after reading Insight, The Surprising Truth of How Others See Us, How We See Ourselves, and Why the Answers Matter More Than We Think by Tasha Eurich. In reading this book, I learned that most of us have poor self-awareness and therefore wouldn't be able to answer this question accurately. Eurich says, "The truth is that while most of us think we know ourselves pretty well, this confidence is often unfounded. Researchers have established that our self-assessments are often flawed in substantive and systemic ways. Studies show that we tend to be terrible judges of our own performance and abilities, from our leadership skills to our car driving prowess to our performance at work and school. The scariest part? The least competent people are usually the most confident in their abilities." To my first point about checking references regardless, I figure it's good to get a second opinion other than the person themselves. And indeed, Eurich says, armed with only our own observations, even the most dedicated students of self-awareness among us risk missing key pieces of the puzzle. To my second point of answering the question focusing exclusively on the positives, I remember this little nugget from Eurich. According to behavioral economist and Nobel Prize laureate Daniel Kahneman, human beings possess an almost unlimited ability to ignore our ignorance. Research suggests that we tend to think we're smarter, funnier, thinner, better looking, more socially skilled, more gifted at sports, superior students, and better drivers than we objectively are. Scientists have dubbed this the better than average effect. Reflecting a little further on the second point, I don't think I have ever admitted to having a constructive criticism of myself in answering the "how would your coworkers describe you" question. What's more, I also can't recall any persons I have interviewed recently sharing their flaws when asked this question either. It would be the most realistic if we said something like, "My coworkers would say I'm very organized and I tend to get snappy around deadlines." It's a nuanced and varied response, just as we are nuanced and varied humans. I'm not the only person who tends to evade the tougher aspect of this question. Eurich gives us some numbers. In a study of more than 13,000 professionals, researchers found almost no relationship between self-assessed performance and objective performance ratings. In a second investigation, more than 33% of engineers rated their performance in the top 5% relative to their peers, and only one brave soul out of 1,000 labeled himself as below average. You might be thinking at this point, as I was when I first read all this, that surely there must be some people out there who have good self-awareness, could therefore answer the question, how would your coworkers describe you, ultimately making it worth our while during interviews. There are, in fact, self-awareness unicorns, defined by Eurich as people who have made transformational improvements to their self-awareness. Self-awareness unicorns are rare. Eurich said that in researching and surveying thousands of people from all over the world, her team identified only 50 individuals who fit the self-awareness unicorn criteria. I also wanted to address people who don't underestimate or actively underrate their abilities and performance. I do believe things like imposter syndrome, systemic discrimination, etc. are very real and would have a hand in how people self-evaluate what they think their coworkers might say about them. I find Eurich's comments on this quite interesting. She says, "People often ask me whether there are people who underrate themselves. The answer is yes, although these people tend to be fewer and farther between. Yet just as overconfidence hurts our self-awareness, failing to appreciate our strengths shows a different kind of unself-awareness. So where does all of this leave us? Long-term, fortunately, self-awareness can be learned. Short-term, I vote that we ditch this question in interviews and instead ask more directly what a candidate feels their strengths are and what are some things they would like to improve upon. And of course, check references.